The massive warship floated silently through the darkness of space. Inside its metal halls, Commander Zach Thor of the Krellian Empire stood before a group of new soldiers. His 4 arms crossed over his armored chest as he looked down at them with his 3 eyes. "Today, you learn about the galaxy's weakest species," he said. His voice echoed through the training room. "The humans." The young Krellian soldiers laughed. They had heard stories about humans before. Small, soft creatures with only 2 arms and 2 eyes. They lived on a single planet called Earth, far from the center of the galaxy. Most species ignored them completely. "Look at this," Zach Thor said. He pressed a button on the wall. A screen appeared, showing images of human weapons. "This is what humans call a rifle. They still use chemical explosions to throw small pieces of metal at their enemies." More laughter filled the room. The Krellians had plasma weapons that could melt through armor in seconds. They had energy shields that stopped any physical attack. The idea of using primitive bullets seemed like a joke to them. "Sir," one young soldier raised a claw. "Why do we even study human weapons? They could never hurt us." Zach Thor's mandibles clicked in what passed for a smile among his kind. "Because knowing your enemy, even a weak one, is important. The humans have recently started exploring beyond their solar system. We might encounter them during our conquest of this sector." He changed the image on the screen. Now it showed a human soldier holding a long rifle with a scope on top. This is what they call a sniper rifle. The humans seem proud of these weapons. They claim their best warriors can hit targets from great distances. "How far?" another soldier asked. "Their records say up to 2 of their kilometers," Zach Thor replied. "Of course, this means nothing when our shields can detect and stop any projectile." The soldiers nodded confidently. Their personal shields could sense incoming attacks and create an energy barrier automatically. No physical weapon could penetrate them. It was one reason the Krellian Empire had conquered so many worlds. On the other side of the galaxy, Captain Maria Rodriguez cleaned her rifle in the quiet of her bunker. She was the leader of Ghost Team, one of Earth's elite sniper units. Her team had been stationed on the remote planet of Haven 7 for 6 months now. Haven 7 was humanity's first real colony outside the solar system. It wasn't much to look at, mostly desert and rocks, but it had water and breathable air. More importantly, it was far from Earth, which made a perfect testing ground for new tactics and weapons. "Captain," her spotter, James Chun, entered the bunker. "Command just sent a priority message. Long-range sensors picked up Krellian ships heading this way." Maria set down her rifle carefully. "How many?" 3 warships. "Looks like a scouting force," James replied. "ETA is 4 days." Maria stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the red sand stretching to the horizon. A few dome-shaped buildings marked the colony's main settlement about 10 kilometers away. "They finally found us," she said quietly. "Alert the rest of Ghost Team. Tell them to start preparations." "You think they'll attack?" James asked. "The Krellians don't send warships for peaceful visits," Maria answered. "They're conquerors. They see our colony, they'll want to take it." Over the next 4 days, Ghost Team prepared. There were only 6 soldiers, 3 sniper pairs, but they were the best humanity had. Each sniper had years of training and could put a bullet through a coin at 2 kilometers. Their spotters were experts at reading wind, calculating distance, and finding targets. The team spread out across the rocky hills surrounding the colony. They dug hidden positions, set up camouflage hides, and memorized every detail of the terrain. They had studied Krellian technology and tactics from intercepted communications. They knew about the shields, the plasma weapons, and the 4-armed warriors' incredible strength. But the snipers also knew something the Krellians didn't. Human weapons might be primitive, but human warriors had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing from a distance. And Ghost Team had some new toys that even Earth's military didn't know about yet. When the Krellian ships arrived, they announced their presence with typical arrogance. The lead ship's communication system broadcast across all channels. "Attention, human colonists," Zach Thor's voice boomed. "I am Commander Zach Thor of the Krellian Empire. You have built an illegal settlement in territory claimed by our glorious empire. Surrender immediately, and you may serve as laborers. Resist, and you will be destroyed. The colony's administrator, an older woman named Dr. Sarah Park, responded calmly. This is Dr. Park of Haven 7. We are a peaceful scientific colony. We have no military forces here. Please, can we discuss this? Zach Thor laughed, the sound like grinding metal. You have 1 hour to surrender. After that, we will take what we want. From her position in the hills, Maria watched through her scope as Krellian dropships descended from the warships. Each dropship carried 20 soldiers. She counted 6 ships, total 120 enemy warriors. All ghost units, this is Ghost 1, she whispered in her radio. Enemy forces deploying 2 clicks north of the colony. Weapons hot. Remember your sectors. Wait for my signal. The Krellian soldiers formed up in perfect formations. Their blue armor gleamed in the afternoon sun. Each warrior carried a plasma rifle and had the telltale shimmer of an active shield around them. They began marching toward the colony in disciplined ranks. Zach Thor himself led the assault. He was larger than the other Krellians, with decorative spikes on his armor, showing his rank. He walked with absolute confidence. Why shouldn't he? His forces outnumbered the humans, had superior technology, and were protected by shields that made them invulnerable to primitive weapons. Ghost units, pick your targets, Maria ordered. Officers and heavy weapons first. On my mark. She centered her crosshairs on Zach Thor himself. The distance was 2,847 meters according to her rangefinder. Wind was mild, blowing left to right at 6 kilometers per hour. She made tiny adjustments to her aim. The special ammunition in her rifle was humanity's secret weapon. The bullets looked normal from the outside, but each one contained a tiny gravitational field generator. It was based on technology recovered from an ancient alien crash site in Siberia. The field only lasted for milliseconds, but it was enough to confuse the Krellian shields. Ghost Team, execute. 6 rifles fired almost simultaneously. The sound was barely audible at this distance, just soft pops that the wind carried away. Zach Thor was in the middle of giving orders when something impossible happened. A sharp pain exploded through his shoulder, spinning him around. Purple blood sprayed across the sand. He looked down in shock at the hole in his armor, right where his shield should have protected him. Around him, 5 other Krellians fell. Officers and heavy weapon specialists dropped to the ground, purple blood pooling beneath them. The neat formations dissolved into chaos as soldiers dove for cover. Shields up! Shields up! Someone screamed. But the shields were up. They had been up the whole time. That was the terrifying part. Where are they shooting from? A sergeant yelled. No one knew. The humans were too far away to see, hidden in the rocky terrain. The Krellians' advanced sensors, designed to detect energy weapons, couldn't track the primitive chemical signatures of the rifles. Maria smiled grimly as she worked the bolt on her rifle, ejecting the spent casing. Through her scope, she could see Zach Thor crawling behind a rock, purple blood trailing behind him. He was still alive, but badly wounded. Beautiful shot, Captain, James whispered beside her, adjusting for his movement. Next target, bearing 047, range 2,852 meters. Squad leader with the heavy plasma cannon. Maria shifted her aim slightly. The Krellian soldier was crouched behind what he thought was good cover, a low sand dune. But from Maria's elevated position, his head and shoulders were clearly visible. She squeezed the trigger. Another soft pop. Nearly 3 kilometers away, the squad leader's helmet exploded in a shower of armor fragments and purple gore. The heavy plasma cannon fell from his dead claws. Panic spread through the Krellian ranks. They had conquered dozens of worlds, fought against various species, but never had they encountered this. Enemies that could kill from so far away that they couldn't even be seen. Weapons that somehow bypassed their perfect shields. Fall back. Fall back to the dropships, someone ordered. But as the Krellians tried to retreat, more shots rang out. Ghost Team's other snipers had joined the hunt. Soldiers fell with precise shots to their heads, and vital organs. Each bullet found its mark with deadly accuracy. The Krellians fired their plasma weapons wildly in all directions, hoping to hit their unseen attackers. Bright energy bolts scorched the rocks and sand, but they were shooting at ghosts. The snipers were too far away, too well hidden. In his command ship, watching through helmet cameras as his soldiers died, Subcommander Velkar couldn't believe what he was seeing. This is impossible. Their projectile weapons cannot penetrate our shields. But the evidence was clear. In just 10 minutes, Ghost Team had killed or wounded 30 Krellian soldiers. The survivors huddled behind rocks and, in craters, afraid to move. On the ground, Zach Thor pressed a claw to his wounded shoulder, trying to stop the bleeding. His pride burned hotter than the pain. How could this happen? How could the weak humans with their primitive weapons do this to the mighty Krellian Empire? He activated his communicator with a shaking claw. Velkar, send down the heavy armor units. These humans, they have snipers. Long-range killers we cannot see. Commander, perhaps we should reconsider Dash. Send them down. Zach Thor roared. I will not be defeated by primitives. From her hide, Maria watched new dropships descending. These carried Krellian tanks, hovering vehicles with thick armor and heavy plasma cannons. She keyed her radio. Ghost 4, Ghost 6, you're up. Time to test the special packages. 2 kilometers away, Corporal Lisa Wong and Sergeant Mike Davis prepared their weapons. They weren't using standard sniper rifles. These were anti-material rifles, massive weapons that fired bullets as thick as a human thumb. Each bullet was hand-loaded with an enhanced gravitational field generator that could maintain its effect for a full second. The first Krellian tank emerged from its dropship, hovering a meter above the ground. Its armor was designed to withstand direct hits from enemy ships' weapons. Surely no primitive human weapon could damage it. Lisa centered her crosshairs on the tank's sensor array, a cluster of delicate instruments on its turret. Range 3,100 meters. No wind. Firing. The anti-material rifle roared, its sound echoing across the desert. The massive bullet crossed the distance in under 2 seconds. The gravitational field generator activated on impact, creating a localized distortion that confused the tank's shields for just a moment. That moment was enough. The bullet smashed through the sensor array and deep into the tank's control systems. Sparks flew as critical components shattered. The tank spun wildly, its hover system failing, before crashing into the sand. Good effect on target, her spotter confirmed. Next tank emerging, bearing 090. One by one, Ghost Team disabled or destroyed the Krellian armor. They targeted weak points, sensor arrays, hover projectors, weapon joints. Each shot was carefully aimed and devastatingly effective. The Krellians had never faced anything like this. Their military doctrine was based on shields that made them invulnerable to projectile weapons. They charged into battle, overwhelming enemies with superior firepower and technology. But now they were being picked apart by an enemy they couldn't see, using weapons they had dismissed as primitive relics. As the sun began to set, painting the desert red, Zach Thor finally gave the order he never thought he would give. All units, retreat to the ships. We need to reconsider our approach. The surviving Krellians rushed back to their dropships, carrying their wounded. They left behind 43 dead and 7 destroyed vehicles. Ghost Team hadn't lost a single soldier. In fact, the Krellians had never even seen them. Back in her hide, Maria watched the dropships lift off through her scope. She could see Zach Thor being helped aboard, his proud posture replaced by a painful limp. Ghost Team, hold positions, she ordered. They might try another attack. But the Krellian ships were already moving away from the planet. On the command deck, Zach Thor slumped in his chair, purple blood seeping through his bandages. His officers stood silently, afraid to speak. Send a message to the fleet, Zach Thor said finally. Tell them the humans are not what we expected. Tell them about the snipers. Sir, Velkar said carefully. The fleet will not believe that primitive projectile weapons defeated our shields. Zach Thor's 3 eyes focused on his subcommander. Then, They will learn the same painful lesson we did. The humans may use primitive weapons, but they have mastered them in ways we never imagined. We mocked their rifles and bullets. We laughed at their claims of long-range accuracy. We were fools. He stood up slowly, grimacing at the pain. Prepare a full report. Include everything: the invisible enemies, the impossible shots, the weapons that pierce our shields. The Empire must know that humans are not prey. They are predators. And we walked into their hunting ground. As the Krellian ships jumped to hyperspace, Dr. Park stood in the colony's command center, hardly believing what had happened. Captain Rodriguez, this is Colony Command. Did you just defeat an entire Krellian assault force? Maria's voice came through the radio, calm and professional. Affirmative. Document. Ghost team engaged and repelled enemy forces. No friendly casualties. How? They had shields, plasma weapons, tanks. They had a lot of fancy tech, Maria agreed. But they made one big mistake. They forgot that humans have been perfecting the art of killing from a distance for thousands of years. A rock thrown by a prehistoric hunter, an arrow from an English longbow, a bullet from a modern rifle. It's all the same principle. Put your projectile on target, and physics does the rest. She paused, then added, besides, we had a few tricks they didn't expect. Let's just say those ancient alien artifacts in Siberia taught us some interesting things about gravitational fields. Dr. Park sank into a chair, relief washing over her. Will they be back? Maybe, Maria said. But I doubt they'll underestimate human weapons again. And by the time they return, Earth will have heard about this. They'll send more teams, better equipment. The Krellians just learned that mocking human weapons is a very bad idea. In the fading light, Ghost Team remained in their positions, watching the empty sky. They had won the first encounter, but they knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy had just discovered that humans might use primitive weapons, but they used them very, very well. The legend of Ghost Team would spread through the Krellian Empire faster than their ships could travel. Soldiers would whisper about the invisible human warriors who could kill from impossible distances. Officers would study the battle, trying to understand how their perfect shields had failed. And on 1,000 worlds, various species would hear the story and wonder, if humans could do this with simple rifles and bullets, what else were they capable of? For Ghost Team, it was just another successful mission. They packed up their gear as darkness fell, disappearing into the rocky hills like the ghosts they were named after. They had a colony to protect and a reputation to build. The galaxy would learn to fear the human sniper. The High Council chamber of the Krellian Empire stretched upward like a massive cathedral. 300 of the Empire's most powerful leaders sat in circular rows, their combined presence making the air feel heavy with authority. At the center, Fleet Admiral Korvac stood rigid, his 4 arms clasped behind his back. You dare bring me this fantasy? Korvac's voice echoed through the chamber. 43 elite warriors killed by human primitives, 7 heavy tanks destroyed, and not one enemy soldier seen. Commander Zach Thor stood before the council, his shoulders still bandaged from his wound. Several officers from the failed assault flanked him, their heads low in shame. I speak only truth, Admiral, Zach Thor said. I have brought sensor recordings, helmet footage, and testimony from survivors. The humans have weapons that bypass our shields. Murmurs rippled through the council. Many members clicked their mandibles in disbelief or anger. Show us these recordings, ordered Elder Mothvar, the oldest member of the council. Her 6 eyes had seen the rise of the Empire across 500 years. The lights dimmed as holographic projections filled the chamber's center. The council watched in silence as Krellian soldiers fell one by one to invisible attacks. They saw the chaos, the panic, the desperate retreat. When the recording ended, the silence was deafening. Trickery, one council member snarled. The humans used some kind of cloaking technology. Our sensors detected no energy signatures consistent with cloaking devices, Zakthor replied. The humans were simply too far away to see. Their projectile weapons have greater range than we believe possible. Admiral Korvac descended from his platform, circling Zach Thor like a predator. You would have me believe that the humans, using chemical-propelled metal slugs, defeated our best technology? Not just metal slugs, Zach Thor said, standing straighter despite his wound. The projectiles somehow disrupted our shields at the point of impact. I suspect they have developed technology we don't understand. Impossible, Korvac spat. The shield generators are based on quantum field manipulation. No primitive kinetic weapon could dash, and yet 43 warriors are dead, Elder Mothvar interrupted. Her voice carried the weight of centuries. Perhaps it is time we stopped underestimating these humans. The Admiral's 3 eyes blazed with fury, but he couldn't argue with the Elder. He turned back to Zach Thor. Very well. If the humans have effective long-range weapons, we will adapt. I am assigning the 7th Fleet to your command. 1,000 ships, 50,000 warriors, orbital bombardment platforms that can turn their planet to glass from beyond their weapon range. Admiral, Zach Thor said carefully, I request permission to try a different approach first. You failed once, and you dare ask for dash. Let him speak, Elder Mothvar commanded. Zach Thor took a breath. The humans demonstrated mastery of a specific type of warfare, but they must have weaknesses. Let me take a smaller force and probe their defenses, learn their capabilities. If we attack with overwhelming force now, they may reveal even more dangerous weapons. Admiral Korvac considered this. Much as he hated to admit it, the logic was sound. You have one more chance, Commander. Take the 19 strike group. But if you fail again, I will personally lead the 7th Fleet to burn every human world to ash. On Haven 7, life had returned to something resembling normal. The colony's 3,000 residents went about their work, but everyone knew that the Krellian Empire wouldn't give up easily. The colonial government had sent an urgent message to Earth, but even at faster-than-light communication speeds, it would take weeks to get a response and months for any reinforcements to arrive. Ghost Team remained on high alert. They had been joined by the colony's other military unit, a platoon of colonial Marines led by Lieutenant Jackson Torres. The Marines were good soldiers, but they were equipped for conventional warfare, not the long-range precision killing that had saved the colony. They'll be back, Maria said during the evening briefing. She stood before a holographic map of the surrounding terrain. And they won't make the same mistakes. We need to be ready for different tactics. What are you thinking? Lieutenant Torres asked. He was young, maybe 25, but his eyes showed the hardness of someone who had seen combat. Orbital bombardment is their most likely response, Maria replied. They can sit in orbit and pound us with plasma weapons. Our rifles can't reach that high. The colony has shield generators, Dr. Park said from her seat at the table. They should hold against bombardment for a while. Keyword being a while, Maria noted. We need other options. Chen, what did you find in those Krellian databases we captured? James Chun, Ghost Team's tech specialist, pulled up his tablet. Their shield technology is fascinating. It's based on quantum field manipulation that creates a barrier against high-energy impacts. That's why our special bullets work. The gravitational field disrupts the quantum matrix just long enough for the projectile to pass through. Can we improve on that? Maria asked. Maybe, but I found something else interesting. The Krellians are absolutely dependent on their shields. Their entire military doctrine assumes shield superiority. Take that away, and they're actually quite vulnerable. How do we take away shields from an entire fleet? Chin smiled. I have some ideas, but I'll need help from the colony's engineers. And we'll need to work fast. Over the next 2 weeks, Haven 7 transformed. The colonists, mostly scientists and engineers who had come to study the planet, threw themselves into defense preparations. Underground bunkers were expanded. New weapons were built using Chen's designs. The Ghost Team shared their expertise, training volunteers in marksmanship and concealment. Dr. Sarah Park proved surprisingly adept at organization. The elderly administrator had been a logistics officer in the Earth Defense Force 40 years ago, and those skills came flooding back. Miranda, I need your geology team to identify every cave system within 50 kilometers, she ordered during one planning session. Thomas, your chemistry department is now making explosive compounds. Alice, get your programming team working with Chun on those shield disruptor designs. The colony's manufacturing facilities, originally meant for making farming equipment and building supplies, retooled for war production. 3D printers ran day and night, producing ammunition, weapon parts, and strange devices based on Chin's specifications. Maria spent her days training the volunteer militia. Most colonists had never held a weapon before coming to Haven 7, but desperation was a powerful motivator. Remember, you're not trying to be snipers, she told a group of volunteers. That takes years of training. You just need to hit a target at 300 meters. The Krellians are big, and without their shields, they're just meat and bone like anything else. One volunteer, a young botanist named David Kim, raised his hand. Captain, what if their shields work this time? What if they've adapted? Then we adapt too, Maria said simply. Humans have been finding ways to kill each other for millions of years. We're very good at it. The Krellians are about to learn that the hard way. 3 weeks after the first attack, long-range sensors detected incoming ships. The Krellian 19th Strike Group dropped out of hyperspace just beyond the planet's moon. 15 warships, sleek and deadly, formed up in attack formation. Commander Zach Thor stood on the bridge of his new flagship, studying tactical displays. His shoulders still ached from his wound, a constant reminder of his previous failure. Deploy reconnaissance drones, he ordered. I want to know everything about their defenses before we commit to an attack. Commander, his new tactical officer, Subcommander Trallon, spoke up. Our analysis of the previous battle suggests the humans were positioned in the hills surrounding the colony. Should we bombard those areas first? No, Zakthor said. The humans are clever. They won't be in the same positions. Besides, I have a different plan. He activated the ship's communication system. Attention, strike group. We will not repeat our previous mistakes. The humans have demonstrated competence at long-range ground combat. Therefore, we will not engage them on the ground. He paused, letting his words sink in. We will begin with precision orbital bombardment of military targets. Then, we will deploy atmospheric fighters to provide close air support. Only when their defenses are completely suppressed will ground forces land. And when they do, they will be equipped with new countermeasures. On the planet's surface, alarms wailed across the colony. Civilians rushed to underground shelters while military personnel took their positions. 15 ships, Lieutenant Torres reported, studying the sensor data. Looks like a bombardment formation. Maria nodded. She had expected this. Execute Plan Bravo. All units to hardened positions. Across the colony, defenders disappeared underground. The surface buildings were mostly empty shells now, with all critical functions moved to bunkers deep beneath the rock. Automated defense turrets popped up from hidden silos, their targeting systems coming online. In orbit, Zakthor studied the colony through his ship's sensors. Thermal imaging shows most life signs moving underground. They're prepared for bombardment. Should we target the bunker entrances? Jalan Suget? No. Begin with their surface defenses. Target those turret emplacements. Low power shots first. Let's see what happens. Plasma beams lanced down from orbit, striking the colony's defensive turrets. The automated weapons exploded in showers of molten metal. But as each turret was destroyed, 2 more seemed to pop up from hidden locations. Sir, they have more defenses than our initial scans indicated, the weapons officer reported. Continue firing. Overwhelm them with volume. The bombardment intensified. Plasma beams rained down like a deadly storm, turning sand to glass and rock to lava. The colony's shields flickered to life, a shimmering dome that absorbed the energy attacks. But the shields couldn't cover everything. Outlying positions were hit hard. Several of the hidden sniper posts that Maria had prepared were vaporized. The Krellians were being smart, methodical. They were removing the colony's teeth one by one. Ghost Team, report, Maria called over the radio. Ghost 2 here. Position Alpha is gone. We've relocated to Bravo. Ghost 4. Lost our primary hide. Moving to tertiary position. Ghost 6. Still operational. No enemy ground forces spotted. Maria gritted her teeth. The Krellians were learning. But so were the humans. Chun, are your surprises ready? Just finished the last one, Captain. Deploying now. Across the colony, small rockets launched from concealed positions. They streaked upward, too small and fast for the Krellian point defense to track. Instead of targeting the ships, they detonated in the upper atmosphere, releasing clouds of metallic particles. In orbit, alarms suddenly blared on every Krellian vessel. Commander, we're detecting massive interference in the electromagnetic spectrum, the sensor officer reported. The humans have deployed some kind of chaff screen. Zach Thor studied the readings. The metallic particles were creating a haze that blocked their targeting sensors. They could still see the colony, but precision targeting was becoming difficult. Clever, he admitted grudgingly. Switch to wide-beam bombardment. If we can't hit specific targets, we'll simply saturate the entire area. But before the order could be executed, new alarms sounded. Sir, detecting launch signatures from the planet's surface. Multiple missiles incoming. Raise shields. Point defense weapons online. The human missiles were crude by Krellian standards, chemical rockets with simple guidance systems. The point defense lasers swatted most of them from the sky. But there were so many launched from so many hidden positions. And then the missiles did something unexpected. Instead of trying to impact the ships, they detonated a kilometer away, releasing more clouds of particles. But these weren't chaff. They were the same gravitational field generators used in the sniper bullets, but scaled up and dispersed as an aerosol. The effect on the Krellian shields was immediate and catastrophic. The quantum fields that generated the protective barriers fluctuated wildly as gravitational distortions rippled through space. Shields flickered, failed, reformed, and failed again. All ships. Evasive maneuvers. Zach Thor commanded. Get us out of the particle clouds. But it was too late for one vessel. A Krellian destroyer, its shields compromised, took a direct hit from a human missile that had been hiding among the others. The nuclear warhead detonated against the ship's hull, cracking it open like an egg. Atmosphere vented into space as the dying ship tumbled toward the planet. The Wrath of Kortok is down, someone reported. Heavy damage to the Blade of Conquest. Zach Thor watched his tactical display with growing alarm. The humans had turned his own strategy against him. He had wanted to bombard from a safe distance, but now his ships were vulnerable. All ships, increase altitude to maximum weapons range. Continue bombardment from there. The fleet pulled back, moving to a higher orbit where the particle clouds couldn't reach. But this also meant their weapons were less accurate, their bombardment less effective. On the ground, cheers erupted in the command bunker as they watched the Krellian ship break apart. One down, Lieutenant Torres said with satisfaction. Think they'll give up? Not a chance, Maria replied. But we've bloodied their nose again. Chun, how many more of those missile surprises do we have? Enough for maybe 2 more volleys, Chun answered. After that, we're down to conventional weapons. Then, we'd better make them count. The bombardment continued for hours, but from their higher orbit, the Krellian weapons were less effective. The colony's shields held, reinforced by backup generators hidden deep underground. Some damage leaked through a storage building here, a water tower there, but nothing critical. As night fell, Zach Thor made a decision that surprised his officers. Prepare the atmospheric fighters. We're going in. Sir, Trallon said carefully. The human missiles dash will be less effective against fast-moving fighters, Zach Thor finished. And we need close reconnaissance. I want to know exactly where their weapons are hidden. 100 Krellian fighters launched from the warship's hangar bays. Sleek and deadly, they descended toward the planet like a swarm of metal wasps. Each fighter was piloted by an expert, equipped with shields and plasma cannons. In the command bunker, alarms sounded again. Incoming aircraft, an operator reported. 100-plus fighters on attack vector. Maria keyed her radio. All anti-air positions, weapons free. Ghost team, Priority targets are flight leaders and any fighter that gets too curious about our positions. The night sky erupted in violence. Human anti-aircraft guns, crude projectile weapons by Krellian standards, filled the air with streams of bullets. Missiles rose on pillars of flame. And from hidden positions, Ghost Team's snipers began their deadly work again. The Krellian fighters had shields, but they were weaker than those on ground troops. They were designed to stop energy weapons from other fighters, not high-velocity armor-piercing rounds. And the gravitational disruptor bullets worked just as well on aircraft. Flight leader Vartan was leading his squadron on a strafing run when his wingman simply exploded. No warning, no energy signature, just sudden destruction. What was that? He demanded. Unknown, flight leader. No detected weapons lock. Another fighter exploded. Then another. Vartan realized with growing horror that the humans were shooting down his fighters with those same invisible long-range weapons. All squadrons increase speed and adopt evasive patterns, he ordered. But flying faster made accurate bombing runs impossible. The fighters jinked and weaved, their pilots terrified of the unseen death that could claim them at any moment. Their plasma cannons scorched the landscape randomly, doing little real damage. Anti-aircraft missiles rose to meet them. The Krellian pilots were skilled, deploying countermeasures and executing impossible maneuvers. But there were so many missiles, and their shields were unreliable in the lingering particle clouds. Fighters fell from the sky, trailing fire and smoke. Some crashed into the desert in brilliant explosions. Others simply came apart in midair, their pilots never knowing what killed them. In his command ship, Zach Thor watched the massacre with disbelief. In 20 minutes, he had lost 30 fighters. The humans had turned their world into a death trap. Recall all fighters, he ordered quietly. All of them. Now, the surviving fighters fled back to orbit, many trailing smoke or flying on damaged engines. Of the 100 that had descended, only 58 returned. The bridge of Zach Thor's ship was silent except for the hum of equipment. Officers stood at their posts, afraid to speak. They had come with overwhelming force, with technology far beyond what the humans possessed. And, once again, they were being humiliated. Sir, the communication officer said hesitantly. Admiral Korvac is demanding a report. Zach Thor closed his 3 eyes, gathering his thoughts. When he opened them, his decision was made. Tell the Admiral that the humans have developed countermeasures to our shields. Tell him they have turned their world into a fortress. Tell him. He paused. Tell him we need a new approach. Should we continue the bombardment? No. Order all ships to withdraw to safe distance. We maintain the blockade, but attempt no further attacks until I figure out how to crack this nut. As the Krellian fleet pulled back, cautious celebrations broke out in the colony. They had survived another attack, bloodied the Empire's nose again. But Maria didn't celebrate. She stood in the command center, studying casualty reports. They had lost 12 defenders in the bombardment, plus 3 anti-aircraft crews when their positions were hit. 15 good people dead. We can't keep this up forever, Dr. Park said quietly, coming to stand beside her. Eventually they'll figure out how to beat our defenses. I know, Maria replied. But every day we hold out is another day for Earth to prepare. Another day for humanity to get ready for what's coming. She looked at the tactical display, showing the Krellian fleet hovering at a safe distance. We've taught them to respect human weapons. Now we need to teach them to fear them. What are you planning? Maria smiled, but it was a cold expression. The Krellians think they're safe up there in orbit. Time to show them that nowhere is safe from human ingenuity. In orbit, Commander Zach Thor stood alone in his quarters, staring out at the planet below. Twice now he had attacked the humans. Twice he had been repelled with significant losses. His career, possibly his life, hung in the balance. But beyond personal concerns, a deeper worry gnawed at him. The humans were not what the Empire expected. They were clever, adaptable, and surprisingly deadly. If this one small colony could inflict such damage, what would happen when the Empire faced the full might of humanity? He touched the scar on his shoulder, a permanent reminder of human marksmanship. The Empire had grown complacent, convinced of its technological superiority. The humans were reminding them that there were different kinds of strength. A chime at his door interrupted his thoughts. Enter. Sub-Commander Trallon stepped in, datapad in hand. Sir, I've completed analysis of our engagements. I think I've identified some patterns in human tactics. Speak. The humans excel at asymmetric warfare. They use terrain, concealment, and precision to overcome technological disadvantages. But they have limitations. Their weapons, while effective, have finite ammunition. Their shield disruptors require specific atmospheric conditions. And, most importantly, they can't project power beyond their planet. Zach Thor turned from the window. Go on. I propose we maintain the blockade, but shift tactics. Instead of direct assault, we use siege warfare. Cut off their supplies. Intercept any ships trying to reach them. Let time and isolation do what our weapons cannot. It was a sound strategy, one that played to Krellian strengths. But something about it bothered Zach Thor. It felt like admitting defeat. Implement your plan, he said finally. But also begin preparing detailed reports for the Empire. They need to know everything about human capabilities. The galaxy must be warned. As Trallon left, Zach Thor returned to his window. The small blue-green planet below looked peaceful from this distance. But he knew better. It was a world of hunters, of predators who had mastered the art of killing from afar. The Empire had mocked human weapons. They had laughed at chemical propulsion and metal projectiles. They wouldn't be laughing anymore. The Siege of Haven, 7 had begun. It would last for months, a deadly game of move and countermove. The humans would reveal new tricks, new weapons. The Krellians would adapt, evolve their tactics. Both sides would learn from each other. But the real battle was already won. The legend of human snipers was spreading through the Empire faster than light. On 1,000 worlds, military commanders were revising their tactics. Shield technology was being re-examined. The age of Krellian invincibility was ending. All because a few humans with rifles had refused to bow to a superior force. They had stood their ground, used their primitive weapons with deadly skill, and proven that technology alone did not determine victory. Ghost Team remained in their positions, watching the sky through their scopes. They knew the Krellians would return. But they also knew that every shot they fired echoed across the galaxy, a message written in blood and metal. Humanity was not prey. The hunters had arrived among the stars. 6 months had passed since the Siege of Haven, 7 began. The small colony had become a symbol across human space, a spark that lit a fire of determination in humanity's collective heart. But on the planet itself, the situation was growing desperate. Maria Rodriguez stood in the underground command center, studying supply reports. Her face showed the strain of months of constant vigilance. Dark circles ringed her eyes, and her once crisp uniform hung loose on her frame. Everyone had lost weight during the siege. Food reserves at 30%, Dr. Park reported. Water recycling systems are holding, but we're running low on purification chemicals. Medical supplies are critical. Ammunition? Maria asked. Standard rounds, we can produce indefinitely with the materials we have, Lieutenant Torres answered. But the special gravitational disruptor rounds? We're down to our last 2,000. Maria nodded grimly. The Krellian blockade had been ruthlessly effective. Any ship trying to reach Haven, 7 was intercepted and destroyed. 3 relief convoys from Earth had been turned to cosmic dust. The colony was slowly being strangled. Captain James Chen entered the command center, excitement lighting up his tired features. You need to see this. He activated a holographic display showing the Krellian fleet in orbit. The 15 ships maintained perfect formation, just beyond the reach of any surface weapons. Look at their patrol pattern, Chun said. Every 8 hours, they rotate positions. During the rotation, there's a 12-second gap in their sensor coverage on the far side of the planet. 12 seconds isn't much, Torres said skeptically. It's enough, Chen insisted. I've been working with the engineering team. We've built something special. He pulled up new schematics. Remember those old historical files about Project Orion? Nuclear pulse propulsion? We've created a modified version, a small capsule that can reach orbit in under 10 seconds. Maria studied the design. You want to shoot someone into orbit through a gap in their sensor net. That's insane. Insane is what we do best, Chen grinned. The capsule is small, hardened against radiation, and coated with sensor-absorbing materials. One person, minimal equipment, but enough to deliver a very special package. What kind of package? Chen's grin widened. Remember how I said the Krellians are totally dependent on their shield technology? Well, I've been studying their quantum field generators. They all operate on the same base frequency, synchronized across their entire fleet for maximum efficiency. Understanding dawned in Maria's eyes. You found a way to disrupt them all at once. Better, I found a way to turn them inside out. The device is small enough to carry, but it needs to be activated inside one of their ships. Get it to their fleet command ship, and when it goes off, every Krellian shield within 1,000 kilometers will reverse polarity. Instead of keeping attacks out, they'll trap everything inside. The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. It was a desperate plan, almost certainly a suicide mission, but it might be their only chance. I'll go, Maria said simply. Captain, no, Torres protested. You're needed here. Let me dash. This requires precision shooting and small unit tactics. Maria cut him off. It's a sniper mission, just in close quarters instead of long range. Chun, how soon can we be ready? The capsule is complete. The device needs another day for final calibration. Captain, are you sure about this? Maria looked around the room at her exhausted but determined colleagues. 6 months we've held out. 6 months we've shown the galaxy that humans won't bend. Now it's time to show them we can strike back. Word of the mission spread through the colony like wildfire. Volunteers lined up, offering to take Maria's place. She turned them all down. This was her fight to finish. The next evening, as Haven 7 sun set for possibly the last time she'd see it, Maria suited up in a specially designed stealth suit. It was based on Krellian armor designs, but modified with human improvements. Lighter, more flexible, with adaptive camouflage. Ghost Team assembled to see her off. These men and women had become family over the months of fighting. Each one shook her hand, offered quiet words of encouragement. Give them hell, Captain, Lisa Wong said, pressing a small charm into Maria's hand. For luck. Remember, you'll have about 30 minutes once you're on board before they detect the device's energy signature, Chen reminded her. The command deck is in the center of the ship. Fight your way there, activate the device, and dash, and probably die in a very bright explosion, Maria finished. I know, but they'll die with me. Dr. Park stepped forward, tears in her eyes. Captain Rodriguez, on behalf of Haven, 7 Colony, on behalf of humanity, thank you. Maria nodded, unable to trust her voice. She climbed into the cramped capsule, barely larger than a coffin. Chen's miniaturized gravitational disruptor device was strapped to her chest, along with a compact rifle and as much ammunition as she could carry. Launch in T-minus 60 seconds, the launch controller announced. Maria closed her eyes, controlling her breathing. She thought of Earth, of the blue skies, and green forests she might never see again. She thought of her fellow humans across the galaxy, counting on people like her to keep them safe. T-minus 10 seconds. She gripped her rifle tighter. One last hunt. One last chance to show the universe what human warriors could do. 3, 2, 1 launch. The acceleration hit like a giant's fist. Maria's vision grayed at the edges as the capsule shot upward on a pillar of nuclear fire. The improvised launch system, buried deep in a canyon to hide it from Krellian sensors, performed flawlessly. In seconds, she broke through the atmosphere. The capsule's simple guidance system made micro-adjustments, aiming for the predicted gap in sensor coverage. Through the tiny viewport, Maria caught a glimpse of the Krellian fleet, massive shapes blotting out the stars. The capsule's retro rockets fired, slowing her approach to the command ship. According to Chen's calculations, she would impact the hull just aft of the main hangar bay in a sensor blind spot created by the ship's own bulk. The landing was harder than expected. Maria's teeth rattled as the capsule's magnetic anchors locked onto the alien hull. She had made it. She was attached to the enemy command ship, and they didn't know it yet. Moving quickly, she activated the capsule's built-in plasma cutter. The device, another hybrid of human and reverse-engineered alien technology, sliced through the hull plating in seconds. Atmosphere rushed out, crystallizing in the vacuum. Maria pulled herself through the breach, her suit's mag boots clicking onto the inner hull. She was in a maintenance corridor, dimly lit by emergency lighting. According to the stolen schematics Chun had acquired from captured Krellian databases, the command deck was 500 meters away and up 12 levels. Time to hunt. She encountered her first Krellians 2 corridors later, a pair of engineers responding to the hull breach. Maria's rifle came up instinctively. The gravitational disruptor rounds worked even better at close range. The engineers' personal shields flickered and failed, and Maria's shots took them center mass. Purple blood painted the walls. Alarms began wailing throughout the ship. They knew they had been boarded. Maria moved like a ghost through the corridors, using every bit of her training. When possible, she avoided contact. When confrontation was unavoidable, she struck from ambush with lethal precision. Her rifle's integrated suppressor kept the shots quiet, and she policed her brass to avoid leaving a trail. On the 5th level, she encountered serious resistance. A squad of Krellian Marines had set up a checkpoint at a critical intersection. Their heavy armor and weapons made a frontal assault suicidal. Maria smiled grimly. Time for some human ingenuity. She backtracked to the engineers she had killed earlier, retrieving their toolkits. Krellian technology might be advanced, but some principles were universal. She found what she needed: a portable plasma welder and some power cells. Working quickly, she created an improvised explosive device. It wouldn't match military-grade explosives, but in the confined spaces of a starship, it would be devastating. She rolled the device down the corridor toward the checkpoint. The Krellians noticed it, but too late. The explosion shook the entire deck, rupturing power conduits and filling the air with smoke and electrical discharges. Maria charged through the chaos, rifle firing. Disoriented Krellians fell before they could react. One Marine, quicker than the rest, managed to raise his plasma rifle. Maria dove, the energy beam searing the air where she had been. Her return shot caught him in the throat, dropping him in a gurgling heap. She checked her ammunition counter. Less than half her special rounds remained, and she was only halfway to her target. On the bridge of the command ship, Admiral Korvac himself had taken direct control of the situation. The mighty leader of the 7th Fleet had arrived 3 months ago to take over the siege personally, bringing an additional 100 ships with him. He would not tolerate this insult. One human, he roared at the tactical display. One human is carving through my Marines like they're younglings. The intruder is using those shield-disrupting projectiles, Commander Zach Thor reported. He had been retained as an advisor, his experience fighting humans valuable despite his failures, and displaying tactical abilities consistent with their Ghost Team operatives. Then, flood the corridors with troops. Overwhelm this lone human with numbers. Sir, Zach Thor said carefully, that's what the human wants. In confined spaces, numbers mean little. We'll be feeding our warriors into a meat grinder. Then what do you suggest? Korvac's 3 eyes blazed with fury. Seal off sections. Force the human to come to us. And prepare the command deck's defenses. I believe I know where this intruder is heading. Maria reached the 10th level before the Krellians adapted their tactics. Suddenly, blast doors slammed shut ahead and behind her. She was trapped in a section of corridor with no cover. Gas hissed from ventilation grates. Maria's suit sealed automatically, but she knew her air supply was limited. The Krellians were trying to force her to move, to make a mistake. She studied her surroundings carefully. The ceiling had maintenance panels if she could reach them. Maria slung her rifle and jumped, her earth-trained muscles performing well even in the ship's slightly higher gravity. Her fingers caught the panel edge, and she hauled herself up. The maintenance shaft was cramped but passable. She crawled forward, following the general direction of the command deck. Below, she could hear Krellian squads moving through the corridors, searching for her. 20 minutes had passed since boarding. Chen's device would soon begin emitting detectable energy signatures. She had to move faster. The shaft ended at another panel. Maria carefully opened a crack, peering out. She was above a large chamber, the ship's primary communication center. Dozens of Krellians worked at stations below, coordinating the fleet's operations. And there on the far side was a lift that, according to the schematics, led directly to the command deck. Maria considered her options. She had 12 gravitational disruptor rounds left, plus standard ammunition that would be useless against shields. The communication center held at least 30 Krellians, with more surely on the way. Time for the human touch. She pulled out her last improvised explosive and her suit's emergency flare. The flare's magnesium burn would create intense light and heat, perfect for what she had in mind. She activated both devices and dropped them through the panel. The explosion and blinding light created instant chaos. Krellians stumbled about, their multiple eyes more vulnerable to the intense glare than human vision. Maria dropped through the panel, landing hard but rolling to absorb the impact. Her rifle snapped up, and she began firing with mechanical precision. Each shot found its mark: head, center mass, critical joints. She moved constantly, never staying in one spot long enough to be targeted. The disoriented Krellians fired wildly, their plasma beams scarring the walls, but missing the agile human. When her special ammunition ran out, Maria transitioned smoothly to close combat. She had studied Krellian anatomy extensively. Despite their size, and for arms, they had vulnerable points. A knife to the throat dropped one. A strike to the knee joint disabled another long enough for Maria to claim his plasma rifle. The alien weapon was heavier than she liked, but it worked. Maria carved her way through the remaining Krellians, leaving purple carnage in her wake. In less than 3 minutes, the communication center was hers. She sprinted for the lift, knowing reinforcements would arrive soon. The lift doors opened to reveal 2 Krellian Marines. Maria didn't hesitate, the plasma rifle in her hands speaking with lethal authority. As the lift rose toward the command deck, Maria checked Chen's device. It was beginning to emit a faint hum, the gravitational field generator warming up. 5 minutes, maybe less, before it reached critical mass. The lift doors opened to reveal the command deck of the Krellian flagship. It was a massive chamber filled with control stations and tactical displays. At its center sat Admiral Korvac himself, surrounded by his elite guard. "So," the Admiral said, his voice carrying across the chamber, "the human has arrived. I am impressed. You've killed 43 of my warriors to reach this point." Maria stepped out of the lift, plasma rifle raised. 47, actually. Your count's a bit off. Impudent creature. Do you think you can defeat all of us? You're outnumbered 20-1. I've had worse odds, Maria replied. Her hand moved slowly toward Chen's device. Besides, I don't need to defeat you. I just need to get close enough. Understanding dawned in Zach Thor's eyes. Admiral, she carries a weapon. Some kind of dash. Maria yanked the device free and activated it. Immediately, a sphere of distorted light began expanding around her. The gravitational field manipulation was visible to the naked eye, reality bending and warping. Kill her, Korvac roared. The elite guard opened fire. Plasma beams converged on Maria's position. She dove and rolled, but there was nowhere to hide on the open command deck. A beam caught her in the shoulder, spinning her around. Another hit her leg, dropping her to one knee. But it was too late. The device reached critical mass. The explosion wasn't what anyone expected. Instead of destructive force, a wave of inverted gravitational energy swept outward. Every shield generator it touched reversed polarity, exactly as Chun had predicted. Suddenly, every Krellian on every ship found themselves trapped inside their own shields. The protective barriers that had made them invincible now became prisons. Plasma weapons fired inside the shields couldn't escape, the energy reflecting back on the shooters. On the command deck, chaos erupted. Krellians screamed as their own weapons turned against them. The more they fired, the more damage they inflicted on themselves. The elite guard fell one by one, victims of their own reflected plasma. Maria lay on the deck, bleeding from multiple wounds, but alive. The reverse shields had protected her from the worst of the barrage. She watched with grim satisfaction as the Krellian command structure tore itself apart. Admiral Korvac himself tried to escape, but his personal shield was the strongest on the ship. He was trapped in a sphere of his own making, his roars of rage echoing in the confined space. But Chen had been conservative in his estimates. The effect spread beyond the 1,000-kilometer radius he had predicted. Every Krellian ship in orbit around Haven 7 was affected. On vessel after vessel, crews found themselves trapped, their own defenses turned against them. On the planet's surface, the colonists watched in amazement as the night sky lit up with explosions. Krellian ships collided with each other, their navigation systems failing as crews panicked. Others simply detonated as internal plasma conduits ruptured, the released energy unable to escape the reverse shields. "My God," Dr. Park whispered. "She did it. Maria actually did it." The siege of Haven 7 was broken in minutes. The mighty Krellian fleet, over 100 warships strong, was reduced to drifting hulks and expanding debris fields. The few ships on the edge of the effect managed to jump to hyperspace, carrying tales of horror back to the Empire. On the command ship, Maria dragged herself to a control console. The ship was dying around her, systems failing as panicked crew members accidentally destroyed critical components. But the communications array still functioned. With shaking hands, she opened a channel to Haven 7. "Ghost 1 to Colony Command," she said, her voice weak but clear. "Mission accomplished. The fleet is neutralized. Tell Earth. Tell them we held the line." "Maria," Dr. Park's voice came through, thick with emotion. "We're reading massive system failures on the Krellian ships. Get to an escape pod. We'll pick you up." Maria looked around the ruined command deck. Admiral Korvac had finally stopped moving, suffocated within his own shield. Commander Zach Thor sat slumped at a station, purple blood pooling beneath him. The architect of the siege and the warrior who had learned to respect humans, both dead. Negative command. Too much damage to move. Besides, she managed a weak smile. Someone needs to make sure these ships can't be salvaged. "I'm setting the reactor to overload." "Captain, no. We can dash. It's okay, document. This is what I trained for. One shot, one kill. Just on a really big scale this time." Her fingers flew over the alien controls. Chen had made sure they all learned basic Krellian technical systems. Security lockouts fell before her commands, the ship's dying state making it easier to access critical systems. "Reactor overload initiated," the ship's computer announced in Krellian. "Detonation in 5 minutes." Maria leaned back in the chair, her strength fading. Through the viewports, she could see more Krellian ships dying, their death throes lighting up the darkness. Humanity's message to the galaxy, written in fire and destruction: "We are not prey. We are not weak. Mock our weapons at your peril." "Ghost Team, this is Ghost 1, she said into the communicator. "I'm passing the torch. Keep them safe. Keep humanity safe. And remember, it doesn't matter how fancy their technology is. In the end, it all comes down to putting rounds on target." "Copy that, Ghost 1. Lisa Wong's voice came through, heavy with unshed tears. "We'll remember. We'll make sure the galaxy remembers." The reactor's whine grew louder. Secondary explosions rocked the ship. Maria closed her eyes, thinking of Earth one last time. She had done her duty. One human with a rifle and determination had brought down an Empire's fleet. 2 minutes to detonation, the computer announced. In those final moments, Maria felt peace. She had proven what humanity had always known, that courage, skill, and ingenuity could overcome any odds. The Krellians had learned too late that human weapons, primitive or not, were wielded by human hearts and minds. The command ship detonated in a brilliant flash that outshone Haven 7's sun. The explosion triggered a chain reaction among the nearby vessels, their damaged systems unable to contain the surge of energy. One by one, the pride of the Krellian fleet was reduced to glowing debris. On Haven 7, the colonists stood in silence, watching their savior's funeral pyre burn across the heavens. The siege was over. Help would come from Earth now. The colony would survive and grow. But more importantly, the legend would spread. Across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds, beings would speak in whispered tones about the Battle of Haven 7, about Ghost Team and their impossible shots, about Captain Maria Rodriguez, who boarded an enemy flagship alone and brought down an entire fleet. The Krellian Empire would never recover from a loss. Over 100 capital ships and 50,000 warriors destroyed by a single human. Their military doctrine, based on shield superiority, was in ruins. Their confidence shattered. Other species took notice. If humans could do this with chemical propulsion and metal projectiles, what else were they capable of? Alliances shifted. Trade agreements were hastily rewritten. The galactic community suddenly realized that a new player had entered the game, one that didn't play by the old rules. On Earth, the news of Haven 7's victory sparked a transformation. Humanity united as never before. Resources poured into military development, but not in the way other species expected. Instead of trying to match alien shield technology, humans perfected what they already knew. New sniper rifles that could engage targets at 10 kilometers. Ammunition that could penetrate any known defense. Training programs that turned ordinary humans into invisible dealers of death. The art of killing from a distance, honed over millennia, adapted for the space age. Ghost Team became the foundation of a new military doctrine. Small units of highly trained specialists who could infiltrate, eliminate, and vanish. They were deployed across human space, guardian angels watching over colonies and trade routes. The memorial on Haven 7 was simple. A statue of a woman with a rifle, looking up at the stars. The inscription read, Captain Maria Rodriguez, Ghost 1-1 shot. 1 kill, she held the line. Every year, on the anniversary of the battle, Ghost Team snipers would gather at the memorial. They would stand in silent vigil, rifles at their sides, honoring the woman who showed the galaxy that human weapons were not to be mocked. And, somewhere among the stars, in the twisted wreckage of dead ships, Maria's message echoed through the void. A warning to any who would threaten humanity. We are the hunters. We are the ghosts. We are the ones who strike from the shadows. Mock our weapons at your peril. The age of human expansion had begun.